Hello and welcome to Alta Live. It might be daylight outside, but promise me that we are going to the depths, the spookiest depths of San Francisco cult history today in our conversation with Joshua Grannell, perhaps better known as Peaches Christ. We're going to talk about Terror Vault. Basically, the concept of Alta Live is to take an article or subject from the magazine, or in this case, the website, and expand on it in a live interview. Today, we're going to dive deeper into a newsletter. Hopefully you read. It's an Alta Online article written by the fantastic Zach Ruskin on Terror Vault. This immersive annual haunted house experience is produced by Joshua Grannell and a number of other brilliant people. Hopefully he gives them shout outs. The theme this year is cults, namely San Francisco connected cults. Learn more at Into the Dark SF. .com. This event runs September 29th to October 31st at the San Francisco Mint. We're going to send you links, information about how to attend. I will be going this year. If you're afraid to go and need a buddy, let's go together. We'll do an Alta field trip. Before we begin, two things. First, a little about Joshua and his alter ego, Peaches Christ. Peaches Christ, world famous, is a filmmaker, event producer, and cult leader. I want to ask you about that, Joshua. Living in San Francisco, her infamous movie events are self-produced at the legendary Castro Theater before they tour. She also produces and hosts events in partnership with Poly Arts Management for symphony orchestras, and her holiday show plays annually at London's Royal Albert Hall. Peaches is a filmmaker, the alter ego of Joshua Grannell, a writer, and director of the feature film All About Evil. Joshua is the co-owner of Into the Dark production company, which produces immersive theater, including the hugely popular Terror Vault, a show in the historic San Francisco Mint building. Before we dive into that convo, my sales pitch for Alta. Alta Live is the digital interview series we do here at Alta Journal. If you are unfamiliar with Alta, we are an award-winning quarterly magazine focused on California and the entire West Coast. We offer free weekly events like Alta Live, a free monthly California book club. In fact, tomorrow evening, we will host Kelly Lytle Hernandez and her book, Bad Mexicans. And you can join us as a member for $50 a year. You get 4 issues of our beautiful magazine, a hat, a book. It's fabulous. It's exciting. You can also join us for $3 a month as a digital member. If you like what we do here at all, check us out at altaonline.com. Sign up for our free newsletters. Come to our free events. Fall in love with us. Join. I don't consider us a cult, but I think that we are a fabulous community, and maybe Joshua will explain to us the difference. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen to ask questions. I love it when people pop in the chat and let us know where they are zooming in from. We will chat for about 30 minutes, get to as many of your questions as possible. This interview will be recorded and posted to altaonline.com later this afternoon. We will also email it to you with links to Zach's article, where you can get tickets to Terror Vault, and anything else that pops up. So with that, Joshua Grannell, thank you so much for joining me today. I am in Novato, California, North Bay. Where are you located?
I am in San Francisco, at the moment in Hayes Valley, where I live.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Danville, South City. It's great to see another Novato person. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us today. All right, so let's just kick this off. Help me understand. I have never been to Terror Vaults.
Okay.
What is it? How did it get started? How old is it? Give me the Terror Vaults in and of itself.
Okay. I will do my best. We began in 2018, and the concept was really centered around the fact that I met this great guy, David Flower, who was living in Provincetown, Massachusetts, where I was doing a show for a summer season. And David was producing haunted attractions in P-Town, and he and I just hit it off. And I said, I've always wanted to do this in San Francisco, but I haven't really been able to pull it together. And he said, if you can get a show off the ground in San Francisco, I will help you. And I came back to San Francisco after that summer, and I went to a friend of mine at Non+Ultra, who manages the San Francisco Mint building, and asked if they were interested in co-producing an event like this. And they said yes, and we got the ball rolling. And our first year was 2018. David flew out from Provincetown, and our concept was really to create something he and I were interested in, but we hadn't actually seen it done before, which is to take our love of traditional haunted houses that we grew up going to on the East Coast, put on by the local JCs or whatever, and mash it up with our love of immersive theater, and to take these two concepts and really bring them together. So this show is a little bit Haunted Mansion meets, Sleep No More from New York City. It's got actors, it's got a script, but it's also got mazes and monsters that jump out at you. It's about a 60-minute, immersive experience. It's a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. I would say that most people find it to probably be more like a play or a movie that you walk through.
Okay. Intrigued already? Yes, we all are. Okay, so each year has a theme. What have previous themes? I definitely want to get into cults, but what have previous themes been?
Well, the first 2 years, I was so fascinated by the fact that we were doing this show at the historic San Francisco Mint Building. This is the original Mint Building in California that at one time held a third of the country's gold. And the building itself is so historic that it's one of the few that survived the 1906 earthquake in downtown San Francisco. And so I centered the first year, actually the first 2 years, 2018 and 2019, around a fictional history that I created for the Mint Building, which was that it was secretly used as a prison before Alcatraz opened, because it stopped being a mint for a number of years and kind of sat empty for a long time. And so I made up this idea that the city was using it as a prison, and they were putting people in these vaults and locking them up. And so the first 2 years was around that, and you were going through the mint, and the ghosts of the mint were there to scare you and do a lot of storytelling. And in that way, it was probably more similar to a traditional haunted attraction. And then with the pandemic, it offered us a time to sort of switch gears because we had extra time. We didn't do a show in 2020. And so we switched gears and we wrote a whole new story called The Immortal Reckoning. And that's really where we thought, okay, we're going to deliver a new story every year, new characters. I kind of thought of it more like a movie. And so we did that, and that was very successful. That was our most successful show to date, until the next year, which was The Summoning, which was last year. The Immortal Reckoning was about a family of occult artifact collectors who were storing their artifacts in the Mint Building. The Summoning was centered around a seance. It was a lot more fantasy. You crossed over to the other side, and you had to go and bring back the head of a vampire. And so this year, we've really switched gears and created our own cult.
And so The Initiation is the name of this year's Terror Vault. And it is inspired, as you can read in Zach's article, by your fascination, not only with cults, but with the city, the Bay Area's history, and these kind of the intertwining, the connections that we here in Northern California have with cults. I know LA. I see some LA people here. I know that you also have cults. Cults are everywhere. But San Francisco has some kind of bizarre connections to cults. Can you tell me about some of the ones that inspired The Initiation?
Sure. I mean, it's absolutely no secret that my career and my obsession with religion and Catholicism has sort of colored my career, and that connects very well with my interest in cults, and I think these days more than ever, with everything that's going on with our ex-president, cults are very much a part of our culture. And they're fascinating. They're also terrifying, and can be very, very scary, and I think, when we look at something like the insurrection, we can see the danger of a mentally ill cult leader. That being said, San Francisco, I think, has some of the most interesting history surrounded by cults, with some of the most dynamic and interesting people, and continues to. And so we've taken inspiration from the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey
Sure.
was here. He created the Church of Satan here. The Black House was here. He was very theatrical, very San Franciscan. And so the Church of Satan, even the look of a lot of the characters is inspired by the Church of Satan. We definitely have nods to Charles Manson and the Manson family. A lot of people don't
This one
know that.
does.
Yeah, Charles Manson got his start on Haight Street. A lot of people don't realize that. They think of Charles Manson and the Manson family as being, exclusively Southern California, but that's not right. That he actually got his start over at the Haight Ashbury Free Clinic.
Where so many got their starts.
Yes, exactly. And then, one that's played throughout, my creative career over and over again, especially if you see my film All About Evil. I was always very fascinated by Jim Jones and the People's Temple. And quite frankly, I think with Jim Jones, and you look back on what Jim Jones stood for, I think I could have been a member of the People's Temple. He was, because he stood for racial integration. He stood for like a world that I really believe in. His message was very positive and very beautiful and very powerful. And so that's actually what makes the whole thing all the more tragic, is I think the people who were drawn in by Jim Jones, everything he was, preaching about was stuff like we would believe in and like, and, of course, we know he took everyone and left San Francisco, and then, created this horrible mass murder scene with Kool-Aid. But before that, when he was living and working in San Francisco, if you really go back and look at his teachings and look at the People's Temple, it's very seductive. It's very attractive. So, and I'm fascinated by all that.
Yeah, someone points out, Sharon in the chat points out Jonestown. Yes, I too share a great fascination with Jim Jones himself. Have you heard? So when he was I have two questions just for those that may not be as into this as Joshua and myself are. First of all, before we get into Jonestown, which I very much want to get into, can you explain what the Black House is? Because it is no more in San Francisco.
That's true. And I stupidly moved here in the mid 90s and didn't make a pilgrimage before they tore it down, because they tore it down kind of quietly. There wasn't, it's kind of like they did it and then it was a news story. So it was basically the Church of Satan's church, and it was out in the Richmond district, and it was where Anton LaVey lived with his lion, Togar. He actually had a lion living here in San Francisco.
Like a full size lion.
Yes, which it gets even stranger. When Anton's lion had to be rescued by an animal rescue, it was Tippi Hedren's rescue. It's Tippi who ended up inheriting Togar. And so Melanie Griffith grew up with Togar. It's crazy.
Melanie Griffith grew up with Togar, the formerly Satanist lion pet.
Yes, that's right. I know.
Of a random house out in the Richmond.
Yes, that was painted black.
Satanism, the house of
where Jane Mansfield went to worship with Anton LaVey. It's all so hard to believe, but it's all true. And actually, if you're really interested in this, I recommend a documentary called Mansfield 6667, which I'm actually in, and Tippi Hedren is in, and John Waters is in it, and we talk all about Anton LaVey, his history in San Francisco. Togar is featured in it, it's just wild, So that
literally and figuratively.
Yeah, the Black House was where they worshipped, where the Church of Satan met. It was sort of their church, but it's also where Anton LaVey lived and raised his family.
And it is what is there now? Do you have any idea?
Condos. And actually they of course, right?
Housing.
And that film, the documentary film, they go and talk to one of the women that lives in one of the condos.
Do you have any idea where she's living?
She didn't when she moved in. She does now, She's lovely in the film, yeah.
And then she went home and had a seance. And
yes, exactly. Her dog is named Togar.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah. Anna wants to know, what was the title of that documentary?
Mansfield 6667.
So 6667.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And I hope you got that. Okay, so then there's also Jonestown, which
Yep,
I assume that everyone knows Jonestown. I need to just out of respect to the Kool-Aid company, it was not Kool-Aid that
that's
they
right.
drank. It was Flavor Aid.
Yep.
And Kool-Aid is very uptight about that reference. But Jonestown did have its start in San Francisco. It was Jim Jones came from, I think, the Midwest, but had this incredible community, which, as you point, was incredibly diverse and welcoming of all different people. However, even while he was in San Francisco, Jim Jones was
Problematic.
awful, problematic.
Yes,
Yes,
yes. Yeah,
to
I
today's
mean, of course,
terminology.
yeah, a lot of his misdeeds weren't known by his congregation. So, and I think he's one of those people who, with power, became more evil. I think he may have had okay intentions. And obviously, with a lot of these cult leaders, there's a certain amount of mental illness going on, and narcissism and ego run wild. And I think as the power infects them, they get worse and worse. That's just what it seems like, based on my fascination with these people. And I also feel like there's a lot of connections between cult leaders and powerful CEOs of corporations. Like, you
Oh,
can actually,
really?
I do. I feel like if you look at the behavior of, certain cult leaders, and you kind of look at sort of in Elon Musk or,
Yeah.
there's not a big leap between the way this behavior kind of plays out, and the sort of the idea of this ego and this sort of godlike persona taking over. And I definitely think it's one of the reasons I'm so fascinated by it all, is because it's we've got the cult leaders that we can sort of identify, like Jim Jones, Charles Manson, obvious cult leaders. But I then look at things like certain religions and certain corporations and certain political leaders, and I go, oh God, this is no different. We are surrounded by cults and this sort of dangerous groupthink, mentality where people go all in and hand over their faith to, a person or a celebrity or a religious leader or whatever. So I think part of my fascination with it is less about the actual people that we, can really quickly identify and know historically are sort of cult leaders, and more about the people we don't see that way, that are walking amongst us, or have a lot of power and can control people right now, today. It's happening all around us.
That we haven't given that like official cult, which is very
Exactly.
much of a like, oh, well, I don't want to be a part of a cult, but I
Exactly.
absolutely want to storm the Capitol because,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
I get it. Okay, so I do want to get back to one of the tie-ins, one of the cult tie-ins, which isn't specific to San Francisco with the initiation and this year's Terror Vault, is Scientology. Now, if any Scientologist is watching, uh, I want to tread very lightly. They're not known for their sense of humor around Scientology, but can you tell us a little bit about how a rumor that is
Yes,
circulating about Scientology shows up in this year's Terror Vaults?
for sure. I mean, so much of the show this year and the storyline is based on real stuff, right? So we've taken it and kind of mashed it all together and created our own cult called Insight. And Insight is where you come to get deeper consciousness and have your third eye open, so you can more deeply see the world and cleanse the bad spirits inside of you, and all of this stuff that we've taken from other places. But what you find out when you arrive as a guest and you start to be indoctrinated is that there's a group of rebels who've defected from the cult, and they're actually working with you because you, as the guest, are going in as stealth cult members. You are going to be initiated, and you need to work with the rebels secretly, because the co-founder of Insight, who's actually quite nice and good, the good side of Insight, Nancy, the co-founder, has gone missing, and the leader of Insight, Isaac, is saying that she's just missing. Everything is fine. Nothing to see here. Please don't worry. So, obviously that's inspired by the Miscaviges and what's going on. And in our show, you as the guest, you're an active participant in the storyline. In fact, you even wear a costume. You get a sacred vestment at one point.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The guests are very much a part of the show, and guest engagement. You're not watching the show as a passive observer. You're a player in the show, and your mission is to find this woman who's apparently at some point you find out she's somewhere in the institute, and you get closer and closer and closer to finding her, and hopefully, maybe you even rescue her. Who knows?
I don't want to give away any endings of the show. I just to clarify, allegedly within Scientology,
Right.
the leaders of the leader of Scientology is David Miscavige, whose wife Shelley has not been seen in many, many, many years. And
Yeah.
Scientology says, don't worry, she just wants to keep a low profile. And a number of other people are concerned for her well-being, etc. So
Right.
where is Shelley Miscavige is a big question among those that question Scientology, and it sounds like is kind of a big inspiration for the plot point.
It is.
How reliant are you, Joshua, on the audience's willingness to participate? What, are shy people going to screw this all up for you?
Well, we actually have created a system in which people can basically let us know what they're game for. And that is this red necklace that we've been using since year one. It's a glow necklace. And when you wear this red glow necklace, what you're saying to the actors and the crew is, I consent to being touched, being a more active participant in this experience, possibly being fed something, being removed from my group. Perhaps, actually, not perhaps, but there is a very big one-on-one scene that happens with one member of every group in the show where they're taken to a set that only they will see. And it's literally in the attic of the Mint, which no one's seen before. And so when you wear the red necklace, you're saying, I'm all in, like make me a player in the show and I'm excited and I'm in for it. If you ever find that the experience gets to be too much or you're too afraid or you don't like it, you just take the red necklace off and drop it on the floor. And that says, okay, now I'm a passive observer. If you're someone who prefers a more passive experience and wants to just take in the show and see it, not wearing the red necklace from the get-go is the best way to go through the show. But that being said, it is still an immersive experience. There will still be things that you have to do to make it through the show. I mean, it just means that they're going to be less intense, and actors not going to touch you. You're not going to get pulled away from the group. That sort of thing.
I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about I realize this is an immersive experience as opposed to a theatrical play or whatever, but just
Right.
in terms of producing an event in San Francisco, not only in post-pandemic or kind of post-pandemic world, but also just in the conflicting situation. And I'm treading very lightly here, but San Francisco is on a journey to find itself right now.
That's right.
What is it like? What are the challenges that you're facing? How, in terms of hiring actors, of
Yep.
putting on a show these days?
That's a great question. And I think, I am one of these San Franciscans who's had the fortune of being able to build a career here because it's San Francisco. I think that Peaches Christ would not be performing at the Royal Albert Hall, or have been given a lot of money to make a movie if it weren't for San Francisco supporting a weirdo, unique drag performer, filmmaker, event producer. I've been so lucky. So I'm fighting for the future of San Francisco. And I actually really believe that there's a silver lining happening right now, and that a renaissance could take place. And I actually think that rock bottoms aren't always bad. They sometimes force us to make changes. And I think San Francisco is kind of in the midst of hopefully what's a rock bottom. That being said, I see signs of hope everywhere. And right now in the city, there are so many of us that are still here, thanks to Herb Cain and rent control and politicians in the 70s, that were able to stay and weather the pandemic and are still here. And this year, Terror Vault has employed almost 200 local underground artists and performers to come together to put this thing on. The fact that we even have that many people who are still here and able to work on this show is a testament. We do need help, though.
100.
Almost 200. We have 90 actors on payroll, and that doesn't include the painters, the musicians, the costume designers, the wig makers, the makeup artists, the video makers. We are a huge show. It's a massive show, and I am really proud of the fact that we can say we're able to employ this many people. Now, it's part-time seasonal employment. But this year, more than any other year, I am asking City Hall, come and talk to me. We need your help. Give us more space. Let us do more. We would love to take over some more of these buildings and do more shows year round. We are primed and ready. So we're hoping that this year's Terror Vault show, we can literally invite some of the supervisors, that we can invite some of City Hall. We can say, there are artists here, and we can continue to keep this city dynamic and special and put on events that you're not going to get in the suburbs, that you're not going to get other places. And this is what's going to draw people back to visiting San Francisco. So I'm kind of being hopeful, and I think we should be. I think we, being more optimistic about what we have in the art scene is how we're going to, weather this storm. San Francisco's not going anywhere. We're just going through a rough patch.
You mentioned that one of the reasons you credit San Francisco with embracing your art, your talents. Do you think that also is that kind of quality, this welcoming attitude of San Francisco for those that are quirky, is one of the reasons that cult leaders have landed here, have found success here?
Yes, I think so. I think that people, come to San Francisco who are looking for something, and often we're maybe escaping something, and looking maybe to reinvent ourselves or reinvent the world that we live in. And I think that mostly can be a really, really good thing. I think that in general, especially when, cults haven't been as popular here as they were in the heyday of the 60s, 70s, and, early 80s. So perhaps we've better been able to find what we need in San Francisco, through the drag community, or the just the larger queer community, or the sort of open-mindedness or progressive qualities that the city offers, the creative community, the artistic community. I will say, though, that we did incorporate a little bit of orgasmic meditation into the cult this year. So if you don't know what that is, that's a woman's group that it was for men and women, but they were tech community workers primarily, who joined this woman's orgasmic meditation cult south of Market. There's a huge Netflix documentary about it. Oh, you have to check it out. It's on Netflix right now. I forget what the
is maybe it like Nexium or something with it?
No, not Nexium. That was on the East Coast.
Right,
they're fascinating. This is OM. Came from San Francisco. She taught people how to have a 15-minute orgasm through, especially women, through masturbation. And she exploded in the tech world here, and people would pay to live in her warehouse south of Market on Folsom Street. And this just happened. I mean, this happened. This was just finished. She's on the run right now.
Why is she on the run?
Because she's wanted for fraud and all these other things. She was duping these people. And I mean, this just happened, so as much as I can say that cults aren't as big in San Francisco as they used to be, well, she did just pull this off. I forget. I'm so horrible. I should have prepped better.
If anyone knows it, put it in the chat, because I will be watching this tonight.
Yes. Yeah, it's OM, and it stands for orgasmic meditation. And there, and I just watched the Netflix documentary. Of course, I'm gonna oh god, it's called Orgasm Inc. and it's on Netflix. And her
PG-13 episode of Alta Live today.
Sorry, and it was called One Taste. That was her cult, One Taste, and they were south of Market. And
they were living in a warehouse in south of Market.
Yes. And these are people who have means, these are like, a lot of them are tech guys. I think women lived there cheaper. You got to
course.
watch it. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
This sounds amazing. Okay, a couple more questions before we go.
Sure.
Do you have a favorite is the wrong word, the cult, the kind of historical cult or present day? You've just introduced me to one I didn't know about, that you find most interesting, that just is the one that you could go down that wormhole of for hours.
Yes. I've gone through immersion phases of of different ones. So it's like I become obsessed with one. I definitely, especially as a young person and growing up in Maryland and being a convert to the world of John Waters. John changed my life in many ways, and discovering cult movies. And of course, cult movies aren't the same as actually being part of a cult, but John and his obsession with the Manson family, is what led me to reading books like Helter Skelter and being fascinated by Charles Manson. But I've worked my way through a bunch of them, and so certainly Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan was something I was very obsessed with for a long time. We've talked about Jim Jones, but I tend to stay more current. And I went through a whole Mormon thing. I went to Salt Lake City and visited Temple Square, and I went to all the museums, and I had a whole 2-year period of just being obsessed with Mormons. Lately, I've really been into, especially since the sequel came on HBO, the Nexium story, and the Nexium thing. Also, when Wild Wild Country came out and the Rajneesh cult
Oh,
was, yeah.
Oregon,
So
right?
yeah, exactly. So if you know that story and you come to Terror Vault this year, there is a character who is based on Sheila, Adnan Sheila, who's
Sheila.
yeah. So Sheila, you if you know Sheila, you will see Sheila in our show represented for sure. So I go through phases, and right now I would say that the Nexium thing really fascinates me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, someone is asking also, do you have a favorite book about this? We've mentioned documentaries. Do you have a book,
Yeah,
specifically about Scientology?
I don't, I don't know Scientology that well as far as a book goes, but speaking of Mormons, there's one called Under the Banner of Blood that's quite good.
Oh,
Very well done. I really recommend that book. It's fascinating. It gives you a deep insight into the history of the church
not
and,
Under the Banner of Heaven?
Under the Banner of Heaven. Yes. Sorry. And then also the bio that came out maybe 10 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, called Manson. That book is fantastic. It's just a biography called Manson. That's fabulous. But yeah, so many books. I can't, I probably read too many to list, but those two jump out to me right now.
Also Lynn Lombardo, my regular Alta liver, she has friends who lived at the Rajneesh compound.
Wow.
Lynn will need to know more about this.
Yes, because there's a
Um,
lot left unanswered, I feel like, in the documentary. So I
so
have
much left
questions.
unanswered.
Yeah.
As Mary points out, we would all like to see your Netflix queue. That is a good, I bet that
Yeah.
is a good full October, just viewing
Yes.
opportunity. What, aside from Terror Vault, what is next for you for Peaches into November, December, and 2024?
Well, I mean, the big thing is it's so bizarre because I'm not a musician, but thanks to my partnerships with Davies Symphony Hall and the San Francisco Symphony, I now have this weird symphony career where I write and produce variety shows with conductor Edwin Outwater. And Edwin and I, another example of San Francisco giving me a gift that now I get to, take out into the world. But Edwin and I will return to Davies after Royal Albert Hall. We go to Royal Albert Hall before we come back to San Francisco. And we'll be doing our San Francisco show at Davies on December 15th. And they haven't announced it yet, but I can tell you that we've booked Dylan Mulvaney, the very famous trans woman who was part of the Bud Light controversy. She is an incredible singer, a Broadway singer that people don't know. She has this incredible voice. We've also booked my friend Bianca Del Rio for that show. We've got the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus. We've got Sister Roma returning. It is, and tickets are now on sale. They just haven't done the big announcement. Yeah. So if you want to grab a good seat, it's actually good to go over to their website and grab a seat for that.
All right. And if we want to come to Terror Vault,
Yes.
We're terravault.com.
Terravault.com, and tickets are now on sale, and we've got some special events actually that you can check out there. And the show comes with free admission to our vampire bar, which is called Fang Bang, and you can enter Fang Bang and enjoy it before and after the show. We've got vampires who do cabaret throughout the night, and it's just a real we are trying to make it a real big night out for San Franciscans. Like, this is a night at the Mint. We've got this incredible gift shop called the Creep Shop, where we partner with vendors from all over the country to stock it full of unique, spooky stuff. I mean, we even have spooky coffee, So come and plan on spending an entire evening with us at the Terror Vault.
Thank you so much, Joshua Grannell. This is so fun.
Absolutely.
I could talk with you as the employee. Everyone in the Alta team is like, oh my God, Beth is absolutely, I could do this all day. It's been such a treat to speak with you. I love your enthusiasm about cults and about San Francisco and theater and the arts. Thank you so much for taking the time to share all of this with us.
Thanks for having me.
Before you go, don't worry, we will send you links to all of this in an email. Also, I'd like to invite you next week. Author Vohini Vara will be joining us in conversation with our CBC Books editor, Anita Felicelli. She will be talking about her new book, This is Salvaged. So please join us for that. After that, we've got our Writers on Writers series. So a bunch of really fun stuff coming up at Alta Live. And Terror Vault, don't miss it. I'm for sure going to go. So thank you so much, Joshua Grannell. And thanks so much, everyone, for coming. Take care.